Hi, I'm your host, Henry Clavo, CEO and founder of Orlando Insight Group. Each episode, we dive into real conversations with technology leaders, innovators, and experts. We're shaping the future of IT and and cybersecurity, and also thought leaders. Our goal is simple to give you practical insights, real world strategies, and expert perspectives that you can use to drive smarter decisions and stronger results for your business. So, thank you for joining us. So, with more than 20 years of international corporate experience and a decade in global leadership, including her role as vice president of marketing and customer experience, Ana Larrea-Albert blends strategic insights, academic rigor in her role as uh, in her work. She is the founder of the Institute of Leadership and Culture and creator of the Confident Leader Lab, where she helps high performing professionals align their leaderships with their values and mindsets and strength. Anna teaches leadership and organizations in the MBA program at Florida Atlantic University and earned her master in public administration from Harvard's Kennedy School, specializing in management, leadership, and decision science. She's also the award winning author of The Confident Leader From Self Doubt to Authentically You, exploring the neuroscience and narrative power behind authentic leadership. Born in Quito, Ecuador, now based in Florida, Anna continues to inspire leaders globally to step into her voice, own their story, and lead with purpose. Today, we're diving into what truly means to lead with clarity, confidence, and conviction, especially in a world that constantly challenges our sense of identity and direction. Anna, welcome to Orlando Insights Podcast. How are you today?
I am wonderful, Orlando. Thank you so much.
Let's get started. You had a global journey from Ecuador to Harvard to executive leadership. What shaped you the most in those transitions?
Yes, well, again, thank you for having me, Henry. It's always a pleasure to have conversations with people like you who are interested in this leadership development and especially finding ways to lead from where we are. And that is across all industries, across all disciplines. So I appreciate you bringing me in for your show. Your question about this transition, this adventure that I've been on from Ecuador to here to the US to Florida, it started almost 30 years ago as a university student in Ecuador. Moving over here, I studied in a couple of places, um, and arriving to an executive position at 35. It took a lot of unknowns and a lot of moments of deep self-doubt
Hmm.
jumping into that executive role.
Hmm.
So I was able to really be aware, be very conscious of those moments that were challenging, but I knew unlocked something. It was, when you're playing a video game, you have to battle the boss. And once you battle the boss, then you go to the next level.
Yeah.
So those moments, I was able to really take those in, considering that, sometimes we don't give ourselves the time to reflect and learn from what we go through and build towards that leadership self, especially how do I lead myself, which has allowed me to step onto that leadership of others role that I display at work, I display with my students and all of the boards that I'm part of. So it has been challenging immigrating, learning new corporate cultures, really from company to company, and just being very true to myself, despite the fact that it was hard. It most certainly wasn't something that I had expected to be that hard. So that's why I'm thrilled to be in a position to help others in that progression. Right? It's just making sure that they feel there's somebody who understands
Hmm.
and has gone through it and is on the other side saying, you can do it.
That makes sense. And I have two brothers who came here that had to learn to speak English,
Mm,
had to learn the culture, had to go through the struggles and learn lessons that they didn't have. They were the first. By me observing them, I had to, oh, okay, they had to jump additional hoops by learning the language and then processing how they can move forward in their what they want and what their career. So it makes sense. Uh, what inspired you to reframe imposter syndrome as a catalyst rather than a limitation? What was the idea behind that?
yeah. So that's really the focus of my book,
Mm,
right? I start off saying 80%, there's studies saying that 80% of people, give or take, suffer from imposter syndrome. Like it is this condition, this negative, uh, ominous medical condition that we're suffering from, when it's really just questioning. We're asking ourselves questions. So for me, my battle, let's say when I'm out there, the hill that I'm dying on, is to stop looking at those doubts, at those questions that we're asking ourselves with that negativity, with that, I'm thinking of a highlighter or something, just making it that much more prevalent. That language that we're using, that I suffer from imposter syndrome, is just too heavy.
mm,
And reframe it into, those are actually good questions. If I can change the way I'm presenting them,
mm,
process them, and actually answer those questions. So I I know that I went through all of those moments of self-doubt, the self-limiting beliefs, and I decided that for this book, because I saw it so much with my own students, MBA students, right, who came already from great backgrounds with accomplishments, doing very well in their careers, classmates of mine when I was at Harvard who had already accomplished so much. And it just became so prevalent around me. It just became clear how human of an experience it is,
mm,
that I decided, I think there's room for what I have to say in
mm,
the way that I'm saying it in the universal literature. So it was a big step for me to go back to all of the, again, the struggles, learn from those lessons, be able to put them, to write them out, and bring other voices, other leaders into the conversation, into the book, that could show different ways of achieving this authentic leadership, just going back into ourselves and leading from our personal, deep, solid confidence of knowing ourselves, right?
mm. No, that makes sense. In a world where we are trying to succeed, we're thinking how this will come across, how what will people think? Am I good enough? Those are things that come from the mind, as opposed to something that is real or outside of ourselves. So
Mm,
it does make sense that we challenge ourselves. It could serve either as a catalyst to push us forward, or it could be a burden. So
exactly.
it can really, depending on each person's circumstances, it
Exactly.
makes sense.
Yeah, one of the examples in my book, something that I write, is when I started writing the book, I kept asking this question, who am I to write a book?
Mm,
So that's heavy. That is questioning my worth as a human being, right? And what I have to share. So had I surrendered to that question, I wouldn't have written the book. But what I did, and the way I transformed it, that question was actually helpful in the way that it was allowing me to think through, so why do I want to write the book? What is the value of what I have to say?
mm,
That's completely different than who are you, or who do you think you are to write a book, right? So once I reframed the question and said, okay, let me really process, because some ideas are better as essays or even small guidebooks, or right, versus investing years and money and sweat and tears into writing a book. So it allowed me to really ground myself in the value that I'm bringing without expectations, societal expectations, or even my own self-imposed expectations of um, what had to happen with this book.
Mm,
This was truly a space. I was giving myself permission to create this space where myself and others, the readers,
mm,
could feel safe to ask these questions, ask themselves these questions, have the compassion, right, of processing them and going through them in a way that serves them, and not, self-flagellating, right? Not beating ourselves down just because we have very natural and, from my perspective, potentially very helpful questions.
mm. No, I agree. Yeah, it's how you position yourself uh, for success, and how compassionate you are when asking these questions yourself. So I agree with that. In your book, you outline three building blocks of confidence: values and purpose, mindsets and strength. Can you
Yes.
break those down for us?
Yes, I'd love to. So that's something else that I arrived to as I was writing. When I started writing the book, the first step is really just writing things down, right? Just vomiting it. So it's not so nice, but putting everything down on paper, really starting to understand what trends, what themes you're seeing on the messaging that you are trying to communicate. And the more I went through it, plus the more I saw the work that I was doing with my students in class, things started to fit into these containers.
Mm,
And oddly enough, I'm a big fan of three, by the way. So I have three family members. It's my husband, myself, and my son. So I like to work in threes. But it really, everything started to connect into this triad. And when I started thinking about purpose and values, that felt very here. So
mm,
it felt like, maybe I can think of it. And I'm thinking of the anatomy of a confident leader. And I
mm,
do quite a bit on that, with that framework too. That's in the heart section. So I started thinking all of these stories, all of these tools, what fits into that space? So values, your purpose, your mission, why are you here? Something that connects you to why you wake up and do the work that you do, right? That meaning in life. And then, so that was an important part of in terms of building your confidence. I I'm confident. I feel more confident if I know why I'm doing things.
mm,
I'm not going to know what happens at the other side of this really difficult strategic decision that I need to make. But if I know I come from a place of meaning and purpose, and that's aligned with my values, then okay, that gives me a stronger base to make those tricky decisions. Then the other bucket was mindset. So around the mind, perspectives. And it was really about the operating system that we're choosing. That's the important word there. We're choosing to run in our systems, right? In our bodies, in our minds, in order to experience the world. So, what narratives, what filters are we putting our lives through, right? Things happen, things are always going to happen, right?
well,
And we get to choose how we react to them. So, I have a few tools in that bucket. For instance, the model fly to be. There's a fly trap exercise, so very much aligned with how do I make sure that the filters that I'm seeing the world through are serving me.
Mm.
I'm not a fan of saying that's wrong, that things are bad or good.
Mm.
If they're serving you to move forward, to take action, then they're good. And then the last bit of it was my thinking around, okay, great, I have a purpose, I know what my values are, and I've modified my mindset to get me through, difficult moments. But the only way to get through those difficult moments is by taking action.
Right.
So, and how do you take action? How do you get better at taking action? Is by building stronger muscles, more effective muscles. And in that space, that's all about strength. So I have been a really, really big fan of starting with my clients, with my students, my mentees, starting with your strengths. Find out, what are you really good at? I do online assessments. I do the Clifton Strengths Finder 0.2 to 0.0. I do a variety of tests and assessments just to make sure that we are clear in what we bring to the table. So we don't have to pretend to be somebody else with somebody else's strengths, somebody else's skills, but knowing what we already bring to that meeting, to that conversation, to that new role. So that became that. So I found these three buckets, and then I figured, okay, yes, we can build strength. So it's not something that we're born with, but we get to practice and build the muscles for confidence, right? By taking action. So we build self-efficacy by doing the hard stuff.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just block, 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 but rather a bigger block at the bottom with the values and the purpose. Truly, this is a beautiful quote in the book, A Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, of man can go through most anyhow with a clear why. So having that why, that purpose, can guide you through the difficult moments, which we all go through, especially when you step into leadership in the higher levels of the hierarchical levels of leadership in an organization. That was my thought around the three building blocks, and it has really allowed me to focus on very specific anatomy, parts of the body, parts of what I truly believe, by being knowledgeable of ourselves, can help us start again from a solid foundation, making sure that all of those things are aligned. I think that's an important piece of it too.
Yeah, being realistic or honest with yourself, what you can do, what the type of work you're doing, is it contribute to your stress or it's contribute to your value that you want to go in. So I agree with you. It makes sense to have that conversation with yourself, align with your values, and obviously you have to tell the truth. Or if you don't, then you will struggle, and that is, I think, a truth, that objective truth that I think people need to grapple with.
Yeah, for sure. And even somebody I was coaching yesterday, it was really interesting. The weaknesses, of course, we need to know what our strengths are and our blind spots. Ideally, they stop being blind spots. That's the whole purpose of the exercises, right? Creating that self-awareness. But those areas of development, weaknesses, what I love to do is hold on and double down to those strengths and use those strengths to tackle the weaknesses, right? In order to move past in a way that you don't have to focus on what you're not good at, but rather say, I'm gonna manage it or address it just to the point where it doesn't get in the way anymore.
Mm.
But I go back to the strengths. You can use what you're really good at by reframing what this challenge is and going for it, using what comes naturally, what's default for you. So
Mm.
I love when those connections happen, like, oh, this is not so foreign anymore to me. This is not something that I can't even imagine me being good at or me being able to do, because now it's coming from somewhere so much deeper, more to the core of who you are, that it just facilitates that journey.
Awesome. Let's move to neuroscience. From the perspective of neuroscience, what happens in the brain when we experience self-doubt?
I love this understanding, very basic understanding of the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex.
Mm,
So our limbic system, depends who you ask, but generally is understood as in our brain having the organs or this area of the thalamus, hypothalamus, hippocampus, amygdala. And we know the amygdala is the fight, flight, freeze, and I've heard it as appease or fawn,
mm,
but it goes back to very instinctual, which also means very natural reactions to things. We sometimes feel fear, for instance, of public speaking.
mm.
That's a big one.
Brixham.
Yeah, the majority of people much rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy at the funeral. And it makes sense that we're having those emotions, those thoughts and reactions, because at some point in our history, and even currently, there's a social element to it. You don't want to speak out of place. You don't want to be isolated from the tribe, right? So there's a lot of social stress in a way around a lot of the things that we do that justify that fear for taking action, fear for standing out. So starting from that understanding that it's natural, that already, and that the brain is just doing what it was meant to do, that's a piece of self-awareness and self-compassion that allows you to understand that a little bit better.
Mm,
So in that limbic system, we have those reactions. They're attached to memory, and even there's theories around how we react to things based on predictions instead of necessarily exclusively feeling. So there's beautiful science developing now around that. And when we let that exist only in the limbic brain, then we're at the mercy of those thoughts, of those feelings, those emotions. And it's crucial, what my tools in the book and all the exercises that I do with my clients and with my students, that we move it, that we hijack that kind of being at the mercy of this and bring it to the prefrontal cortex.
mm.
That's the executive. That's where decisions are made. That's where we do an analysis, language. So when we're able to bring this feeling of, I don't know, let's use my example. Who do I think I am to write a book? I start going deep into, I don't know, memories of when something didn't go right. And when you're able to hijack that and just bring it to create that awareness of, oh, actually, I am thinking about this. This is my fly trap tool that I love. It just, you capture that self-limiting belief. You put it on paper and you trap it. You're able, and that way you're able to observe it. And you're creating a separation from within you that feels so overwhelming to, okay, it's here.
Mm.
Now I can process this. Now I can start reframing the question and interrogate myself, right, around this. But from a place where it's not polluted with this negativity and this fear, but rather analysis and rationality, objectivity that you can process. So that right there has been, yeah, there's so much more into it, so much more brain science that I even had to remove from the book because there's so much and so beautiful. But is it really, do we need to know all of the details? But I think something like that, it's very empowering, right? It gives you the agency to say, I have the power to not be at the mercy of these thoughts that block me from taking action. I can, through a multitude of tools, right? Get up and find your own tool. Sometimes it's just, I need to take a breather, right? Just breathe I need to walk around the neighborhood to hijack whatever emotion is coming up. I need to make myself a cup of tea. I need to take a break of this. Just understand meditation. There's a multitude of things that the more aware you are of yourself, the more you get to know yourself, you can identify those tools that allow you to create this moment of clarity and let go of that almost lack of control that
Mm.
you have when you allow these emotions and feelings to run wild. So it's just you taking the reins of how you're going to process this without minimizing those feelings, those emotions. So it's not about pushing them down, ignoring that I'm feeling this fear, that I'm feeling a multitude of things.
Mm.
I actually encourage my clients, my students, to get familiar with the wheel of emotions and expand your vocabulary for your feelings, for your emotions, right? So it's not just angry, sad, and happy. There's hundreds of
Yeah.
words that can clarify and can be much more precise in terms of what you're feeling and where that's coming from. So there's this saying, name it to tame it.
Yeah.
When you're in that whirlpool of emotions, being able to create that separation and say, this is what's going on, trapping that self-limiting belief, just it's the first step to going through all of the process and regaining that control and taking action.
You just brought me back to, basic public speaking and skills training. Just being in control and letting it come like a wave. So it is.
Hmm.
You brought me back a bit of my training in my career. So wow,
Very nice.
very fulfilling.
Yeah. And listen, especially around public speaking, something really cool to think about is we get to choose what we call that emotion. So as well as I do, that the moment we step up, we start feeling all kinds of things in our body. Where it's probably different from person to person,
Hmm.
but sweaty hands, red cheeks, heat, heart palpitations, shallow breath. Guess what? Those are physical manifestations of this adrenaline.
Hmm.
So you get to decide whether you call it, I am nervous and anxious about speaking, or you can choose to call it, I'm excited about it.
Hmm.
Because when you get excited about something, when you're about to, I love roller coasters. So getting on the chair, yeah, in the park and like getting on it, it's like the excitement is exactly the same thing.
Hmm.
Feel exactly the same thing. And I get to choose. So that reframe, what you were saying about, getting into the moment, you get to choose how you direct that excitement, that adrenaline, those emotions. And when you say, I'm excited to share what I know, I'm excited to get to meet all of these people in the audience, I'm excited to connect with somebody. That's very different than, having the spotlight on yourself and kind of like, oh, what if I say this wrong? What if I, my accent, what if I forget a particular line? It doesn't matter so much when you're there. The purpose, your why, is there to connect and share and entertain, educate. It's very, very different. So that's the beauty of it, that we get to choose what we call it, how we interpret it, we reframe it.
Now that we know the science behind neuroscience, what are practical daily habits that can help reward the brain for confidence and resilience?
Hmm. I think the biggest, easiest, most accessible tool or habit would be to really be in gratitude.
Hmm.
And actually, this was it. I don't know if it was this week or last week's class. I have this growth formula tool
Hmm.
and it's actually a questionnaire that you can fill out in the back of the book. that focuses on this growth formula, right? It's 4 elements: perspective, reflection, gratitude, and action. And you have all of these questions around there, and you get to grade yourself, and you see where you stand, in which areas you're grading yourself higher or lower, right? I'm really doing this, or I haven't done this in a while. And most of my students, most of my clients, whomever I work around this, usually come up with is low on gratitude. And many times that gratitude is to yourself. So something as quick as having something on your phone, an app, the Tasks app, or something to remind yourself before you go to bed, these 3 things were really good, or just one thing I'm super grateful that happened today. If it was a not so great day, was the sandwich at lunch tasty? Well, I'm grateful that that sandwich was tasty. It's really, it can be something big, something small, but creating that habit, the practice of being grateful, you're priming your brain to start seeing things that are going your way, that are positive. You start picking out all the good things that are happening to you, small and big, and that fills your cup. You can't pour if your cup is not full. Yes, so that saying of making sure that you are that you're full of gratitude, so you can share that with others. And in that, again, that involves compassion and awareness, self and for others, you just create your environment becomes that friendlier and positive. So that, I think, would be a really good first step. And then there's many more things that you can look in the book.
Well, I was thinking who you associate yourself. I think that's also a big factor.
Yeah.
Yes. Who's in your group? Are they taking or giving?
Yes. Oh, is that Adam Grant's book, Givers?
This is just personal experience, but yes, they do reflect Adam Grant's book. It also reflects Jordan Peterson's perspective.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's also important. I think because if you want to succeed, you want to look at other individuals who's done it, not just showcase what they've done visually. So results matter.
Yes, and you know what? Sometimes we think about that we need to be specifically surrounded physically by non-energy vampires, right? Those people that suck the life out of your ideals, your goals, right? But also we get to decide who is in our mental space on our phone. Who do we listen to? What books are we reading? So many times there's this fear that, I haven't found a mentor that can guide me through these moments or develop me to become the next CEO. But again, we have that control, and we can surround ourselves, like you're saying, by thought leaders, books, podcasts like Orlando Insights.
Thank you.
To get that, fill yourself with that knowledge, with that positivity, with that permission to dream big. And in that, I think there's also that bit of gratitude of saying that, let me make sure that I'm finding these people and be grateful that I found them, and that I get to keep them in my space, and they're the ones informing and feeding my brain, my dreams. But that there's absolute control over that, even if sometimes we don't have 100% control over who physically surrounds us.
Totally agree. Let's pivot to your background, Anna. Before academia and consulting, you were a corporate executive. How did executive experience shape your leadership philosophy, as we discussed earlier?
It was me learning as I was doing. I remember clearly, I mentioned this in the book, when I was first hired in the VP role, I was terrified, and mostly because of my own expectations. I felt I needed to know everything. And of
Mm.
course I didn't. And even the expectations of other people, the people who hired me, wasn't that I knew every client, that I knew exactly what every project. This is in the world of project management and engineering. But that was something that I did to myself,
Mm.
and that ambition um, to step into that role, I went the wrong way. So because I felt it at the beginning, so I felt incompatible, inadequate, but I kept going. I kept going, and I took the punches, both self-inflicted and from
Mm.
the outside. And that was really a phenomenal um, experience that started to give me that self-knowledge of, oh, okay, so in this situation, I see what's coming up, and maybe this is not the right path for me. Even in the people that I reported to, that I worked with, they were incredible teachers of what to do and what not to do
Mm.
in my leadership. So I was able to take from everybody around me what I thought worked for me and implement it. And sometimes I tried things that didn't work out. That's fine. My as you read the book, is you know that I love to think about things or ourselves as experimenters, and
Mm.
just trying things on instead of the fake it until you make it, but really let me see how that fits. It works, it doesn't work, it's just data. But it was truly figuring out that after years of feeling that, oh, am I doing this right? Once you settle, there's a time when you settle into, okay, these are my strengths. And I wish I had had my book in that moment,
Mm.
right? Writing the books many times is uh, writing to your younger self in that moment where you needed it the most. So this is the book that I needed in that transition. And it allowed me to capture what were the important parts, what were the important challenges and the important changes that I had to do in order to feel more confident in my leadership. And for obviously, leadership needs to be effective, and not every decision is going to turn out the way you want it to.
Mm.
So all of that, the difficulties that come with leadership, executive leadership, the higher you go, the windier it gets, right?
Yeah.
That allowed me to start, I don't know if it planning necessarily, but finding the pieces of what I wanted my leadership to be, my
Mm.
leadership style. Understanding that everything has to do with context. I like to think in 3Ds, again, the number three, the 3D, in three dimensions: myself, others, and then the context. Right. So that's important in how you experience and manifest your leadership style. So just grabbing these moments, and instead of ignoring the challenges, ignoring the moments of deep doubt, bringing them up, processing them, reframing, processing them, and then learning from them. So
Mm.
beautiful internal work, and getting inspired again for good, for the good and for the bad. I don't like to say good or bad, but for the effective and the ineffective ways that other people were leading in my surroundings.
That's awesome. Um, Based on your experience, what's the most common leadership blind spot you encounter with high performing professionals?
Mm, there's perfectionism.
Ah,
Yes.
tell us, expand more on usually common interview question or response, but in practicality, we do meet those people. How can we learn from them? To, what can we dissect from that type of individual?
Yeah. So I think a lot of ambitious people, driven people, have this self-limiting belief of perfectionism, which is I am not going to do something if it's not perfect.
Mm.
So what is perfect to begin with? What is perfection? So nobody's going to be able to tell that. And in that drive for perfection, sometimes we go into rumination, overthinking things, and we get stuck, paralysis by analysis, we get stuck in our thoughts. And because of this fear of it might have a typo, it might not resonate with other people, let's say for my book, we stop ourselves from experiencing, from learning from that failure or from taking that action. That comes up all the time, Henry. It's the majority of the feedback that I receive when I start having these conversations is I fear to disappoint people in my imperfection, and that on the other side of me being human, we're human, Henry. Of course, we're not perfect. And in the fear of admitting that to ourselves, of disappointing other people, or of people not agreeing with what we have to say, we deprive ourselves of having experiences and learning from them. So it's that fear of failure, very much attached to perfectionism and avoiding that. So a huge reframing, a big step that I like to work on with my clients is let's change the definition of success, right? Failure, let's put failure on the side.
Mm.
What is success? So instead of being attached to the outcome, instead of our worth, right, self-worth, depending on the grade on that exam or the review, whatever grade the manager is giving you, or how many people buy the book. If we decide that success is something like that, external and outcome, and we're at the mercy of, completely outside of our control, decisions of people, and everybody has their own stories, their own universes behind them. It's completely outside of my control. How about we bring success inside of my zone of control, of my area of control? So instead of it being how other people react, it's I actually completed this particular job, and that the completion of it, that I went through all of these challenges, these self-doubts, and I managed to put a period to it, that is my success. That's my win. And I always say, tap yourself on the back. So you start moving the goalpost to things that you have access to things that you have control over. And in that, you're starting to build that sense of self-efficacy. I did the hard thing. I completed. I submitted the project. I made the presentation. Did it need to be perfect? No, because the goal shouldn't be perfection. It should be growth. Did I do it? I did it. Nothing terrible happened. I grew. I learned. So all of those words actually allow you to have that. You feel more empowered when you're managing or addressing things with those words. And then going back to failure, we bring it back and we say, okay, so when something goes wrong, what is it? It's data. So now we're removing the heaviness, the negativity of failure. Not that it's a bad word, it's accurate. But if you're fearing it because of all of the these, again, natural instinctual reactions of what's going to happen to me if this is not perfect and people don't like it, and you change your mind and think, I'm a scientist, I'm an experimenter. Anything I do is me running an experiment. I have a hypothesis of how I think this is going to go. I run the experiment, and then I get a result. It didn't comply, let's say, to that hypothesis. Okay, it's data.
Mm.
My responsibility is to grab that data and then use it for the next iteration of that same experiment, or for future experiments in different ways. So we get to understand what that data is, and learn from it, do something about it, and continue in that path of that science, read more and more and more experiments. So that, having those conversations very much qualms or removes that heaviness from needing things to be perfect, especially starting with, we're not aiming for perfection, we're aiming for growth. We're aiming for, actually, I like the word excellence,
Mm.
because excellence is the best of your ability with the tools that you have, with the capabilities that you have. Not perfection. Whose standards are we competing against? If we're better today than we were yesterday, that's a huge win, right? That is success. How does that land?
Now I'm curious. Now you work with organizations like Microsoft and NASA. I guess you could give us a little insight into what do you see among those exceptional leaders compared to, um, I'll be careful in saying not so, not at that level, but next to it.
Yes. Um, I believe that the self-belief that they have, the self-confidence to say, to to understand which mindsets are useful in the situation, meaning we have this really tricky decision to make. Being able to step into knowing these are the things that I'm really good at, and this is how I can contribute to this discussion, this decision, and being able to also understand what are my gaps and how do I make sure I bring people that can complement where I'm missing, right? Complement me and my strengths, and they bring in the areas that I'm not good at, because I can't be, right. A great, very effective leader is not somebody who knows how to do everything and has strengths, all of the strengths at maximum.
Hmm.
Everybody has their own set of strengths, and having the clarity, that strategic vision to say, in these areas I'm not really good at, and these are important areas for this particular project, let's say, and making sure that those are addressed by how you build your team, or how you upskill, reskill the team that you already have, to make sure that those areas are tackled. I think that strategic perspective, and the zooming out, and knowing that, yes, you are contributing to it, understanding from where, right, that the clear values, clear purpose, mindsets, not letting that fly, get in the way, and bringing your strengths, all of that aligned, and then being able to know that it's not all up to you. I think that's another important part, that many times, as we grow in the careers, we are individual contributors. So
Mm.
it's really about our work. So how many reports did I turn in, and did I turn them in on time? How much data did I input? So it really depends on you and your work. As you continue to grow in the leadership ladder, it stops being about you doing the work, but empowering others to excel, to do their work to the best of the ability. So the set of skills that are needed in that growth, and maybe that's when you were mentioning very effective leaders, maybe the separation there are with people who have not reached that level of, let's say, at the level in the organization that you have responsibility for a large, let's say, a division or a large organization. Knowing that it's not only about you, because you can't remove yourself, you have agency, you have, you're part of that, but it's so much about the environment you build, the space, the psychological safety that you create, that allows your team to grow, to develop, to be their absolute best, including knowing that they're not there to be perfect. So creating that space. And that, zooming in, zooming out is very important. Understanding the context of when decisions or conversations are being made, or conversations are being had. And making sure that despite them having an opinion about something, they allow for that space to listen to voices from below, as Ronald Heifetz says, that it's not, it's my way or the highway, but there's actually people that you have empowered to allow their opinions, even if they go against you, to be brought up and be discussed.
Awesome. Now I'm curious about your background. How has your multicultural background influenced your approach to leadership? I know when I attended Rutgers, I've seen so many leaders go into the Big Four and do consulting and banking. I'm curious about your background. How does that answer your leadership?
Yeah, multicultural. I like to think of culture not necessarily tied to the geographical area where you or your ancestors were born, or even ethnicities, languages, all of those things. I believe that culture is really personal, that we have our own culture that is sprinkled or tinted by, flavored, let's call it, by all those experiences from where we grew up, from the culture of our family, from the culture of the school that we grew up in, that we learned in, the previous organizations that we worked for, all of that, the language that we spoke when we were growing up, or that we speak now, all of that builds your own personal language. So I think having that perspective has allowed me to create connections with a multitude of cultures, with a multitude of people, regardless of where they are, where they were born, grew up. And that has allowed me to, that plus the emotional intelligence work that I've been doing on myself for many, many years, of, first of all, understanding myself, right? And then allowing for the possibility that there's so much, like I said, there's a universe behind everybody, not only in their traditions and norms, but the way they see the world, the type of education they grew up with, even their current responsibilities, maybe financial responsibilities, their health. Maybe they have somebody at home who's going through some health issues. There's so much that inhibits within us, that by seeing it like that, I've created vehicles of communication with people that transcend the fact that we didn't grow up in the same place, that we didn't grow up with the same language, that we have different perspectives of the world. So the same compassion and awareness that I have learned to have for myself, I share that. I'm generous with that with others. And my first step in that, when I'm facing worlds that are different than me is, where do I find a point of connection? What do we have in common?
Right.
And once that schedules, I'm genuinely curious, right? I'm excited for finding that connection point. And once that is established, well, the first step is, we're human, right? We do have a lot in common already, but finding that, it allows me to explore different routes, let's say, or branches of how we relate to one another, right? So that's how I like to think about different cultures, and how I impact, and how it's impacted, and that approach to my leadership, because immediately I consider everybody in my team a culture of their own,
Mm.
happen to have either a similar language or a different language, as a maternal language. They happen to have come from different places on this planet, geographical places. They happen to have a different religion. They happen to a multitude of things, right? So that is, I choose to see their identity as a human versus a particular thing. That when we start labeling people with these broad categories, we lose that humanity, we lose that richness that's behind.
I agree, especially, yeah. But we do have surveys where we do ask populations their current income, where they live, things of that nature.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, maybe you might have the answer or not, but I'm curious to know, even myself, what unique challenges do Latino and multicultural leaders face in corporate environments? Have you seen, since there'll be the growing voting block in the future, so I'm very curious about this.
Yeah. Yeah. The first the first point that I like to make when having this conversation is, based on what I just said, that broad brush, that everybody who speaks Spanish or not, or has family members, ancestors who spoke Spanish, who was born or has ancestors who were born in certain areas of the world, doesn't necessarily make us a block.
Hmm.
So the first flag that I would raise with that is, let's make sure that when we're talking about Latino, we're not assuming or expecting people to think the same way, to behave the same way, right? So I know we're, what is it, 23 million? We're quite a few. No, forgive me. Well, I think it's much more than that. But there's that understanding. Okay, yes, we have been put into a bucket of the Hispanic Latino identity, right? The label. And in my work, what I've come to realize is that the same type of challenges that we face as, let's say, let's call ourselves Latinos, they're universal challenges.
Hmm.
So when I'm having, because I speak a lot in during Hispanic Heritage Month, and I have a lot of students who are, and clients who are Latino, whether they're from abroad or American born or US born. I really like to start with, if you find yourself being othered, as in the first to go to college, the first Latino in a company like I was, I invite you to embrace that uniqueness and use it in your favor, instead of feeling the separation or I don't belong. How do you embrace it and use it for to productively? So that happened to me. I worked for a Finnish company with a large population of French and Italian, German. I stood out like a sore thumb, and all of the let's say, conferences and all of the events, as a Latina, as a woman, this was a pretty male-dominated industry, youngish, not so much now, but back then, at some point, I felt I am in it. It fed the "I'm inadequate" narrative, and when I realized, actually, yes, I'm different. So what? Actually, how do I embody and live my being Latina, being young, being a woman more and productively?
Mm.
So I think I encourage our Latino leaders to embrace authentically, right, from self-doubt to authentically you, who you are, bring that into situations and ground yourself in your values, your purpose, your mindsets, and your strengths, so that you being Latino is something that happens to be, part of your culture, part of your identity, but it's not the only thing that comes through in a corporate world, right? So yes, I have all of these things. I'm colorful. I'm bubbly. I am all of these things, but that's not the my main feature that I want people to know me about. This I'm going to use it as an entry point, but then I'm going to bring my strengths, I'm going to bring my skills, I'm going to show how talented, driven, ambitious, capable I am based on my work, right?
Mm.
And sharing that work. So it's a little breaking past, not ignoring, but breaking past that in the narrative of Latino being in a different position or being less than. No, no, why? Let's empower. And that's why I started the Latina Leadership Collectives in 2015. I was,
Yeah, I agree. That narrative needs to end, and not only that, in general, any narrative that talks down to any group.
yeah,
In
no, we got this. We got this. And let's make sure that, yeah, we have these things in common, which is wonderful. But let's show up with who we are and all of our talents and all of the things that we're capable of doing.
Totally agree. We can talk so much more, but
I
we
know.
have to wrap, Anna. But any events coming up for you, Anna, for 2026?
We, I thank goodness I have a lot of opportunities to speak and share my story, and a multitude of keynotes that have already set up my schedule. It's nice and booked. Loving My favorite thing to talk about is leading with your story and having this empowering message of being the CEO of you. You heard in everything that he said, you have the decision, you have the control, you have the agency of showing up and being yourself and leading from that story. So I have some of that. Of course, the book is it's already translated to Spanish, is being edited right now, and fingers crossed is going to be published in May, and I'm going to launch it in Ecuador, my home country.
Oh, congratulations!
Super excited about that. So that will be available too. I think it's the book won a prize, a medal last year, and the International Latino Book Award said the feedback was, we need this in Spanish. So I said, yes, sir. Let me get on it. And yeah, so I'm doing that. I'm super excited, and maybe bringing the book in Spanish to a couple of places in Latin America, and continuing nurturing my paper baby that I like to call, because it truly has. I put so much love into it, Henry. I didn't want it to be just an academic or a business book. I wanted it to create that connection with the reader,
Hmm.
and for the person on the other side of this book to feel some relief, to feel, just a smile on their face of thinking, I'm not the only one who goes through this. This is natural. It's okay. And actually, now I feel empowered. Now I'm going to step into this and actually use these tools and do all these things and test these ideas and see what works for me to move me into that action, that inspired action. So that's me doing a multitude of workshops as well that I truly enjoy. Keep teaching, which I did not expect was going to fill my heart so much. This is my 5th year teaching for the MBA program at FAU.
Yes.
And I'm applying to start a PhD in educational leadership. So for some reason, I have to be extremely busy. So I keep adding things to my schedule, my calendar. So full of exciting things, Henry. And of course, a highlight meeting you and having this time together. I appreciate so much your time and what you're doing, how you're sharing with your audience, and generously providing these stories that hopefully inspire to take action.
Thank you so much, Anna. And if people want to do coaching with you or work with you, where can they find you, and any social media that they can also search for you?
Sure, absolutely. You can find my website, confidentleaderlab.com. And there will be that's welcoming everybody into programs that I teach. Love to do the one-on-ones. I'm putting together a course. I'm building the Confident Leader Collective, which also is in that website. That website is also includes the Institute for Leadership and Culture. You can get my book there. You can get my book on Amazon as well. But all of the information is there. And you can find me on LinkedIn with my name, Ana Larrea-Albert. Instagram, same. Facebook, same. And I think that's it. I don't have TikTok. I have not dared to step into that world.
We have to change that, Anna.
No. I load it and then I delete it. I don't know what's going on. But yes, I'm actually doing some YouTube. I'm starting to do that. So I would love to connect with your audience. And if there's anything I can be of service to yourself, Henry, and your audience, I'm here for you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Anna, for being part of the podcast. And we would love to have you back in the future.
Of course. Would love that.
That's it for our latest episode with Anna. Any more videos featuring guests such as Anna, please do visit our websites on YouTube and Spotify at orlandoinsightgroup.com. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone.